Okay, so here in New York, it's 8 o'clock p.m., 5 o'clock in California, and different times other places on this planet. Would like to welcome you all to Edchat Interactive. I know a number of you. My name is Mitch Weisberg. I'm here mostly in the background tonight because the person who's going to be leading us is Ryan Schaf, who has written, I think, 4 books, maybe 5 books now, and his current book is A Brief History of the Future of Education. And he's going to be talking to all of us and leading, I guess, all of us in a discussion on what's important in education, what's changing, and if we were to move ahead 30 or 40 years and look back, what are the changes that we think that we were likely to see. So here's Ryan Schaff. He is a rock star in the world of game-based learning, and he teaches pre-service teachers, and has also taught, I think, some graduate teachers also, and has written. Is it 4 books or 5 books?
5 books and putting the sixth proposal in, so 5 books. Yep.
Wow. And is an all-around great guy. So, and you're just outside of Baltimore, correct?
Yes, Elk Ridge, which is maybe about 8 to 10 miles south of Baltimore. So, yeah.
Ah, okay. So I'm going to now pull myself down so that you can run this run the session, and call me up when you want to, or I'll pop up if I have a question. And I'd like everybody, please interact and go ahead, Ryan. It's all yours.
All right. So, the presentation, the activity is called A Brief History of the Future of Education. Just a little bit of a background. I won't go too deep. I wrote this with my mentor, Ian Jukes. He's kind of like a educational evangelist, just an all around great guy, just absolutely brilliant man. He's written over 20 books. Absolutely engaging presentation. Took me under his wing a bunch of years ago, and we've just clicked when it comes to writing books. We're able to just generate some great content, and we actually practice what we preach. We actually used a lot of the strategies that I'll mention in here. We actually used it to actually write the book. He lives a lot of the time in Canada and Auckland, New Zealand, and I teach in Baltimore, and I never get to leave. I don't have the rock star life as Mitch had mentioned, but let's go ahead and get started. So a brief history of the future of education. So the digital revolution has only just begun, but already it overwhelms us. We live in a new digital landscape that is overwhelming our ability to manage our lives. It's outdating our laws. It's transforming long-standing customs, reorganizing the economy, reordering our priorities. It's redefining our workplace, changing our concepts of reality, and making us sit for ever longer periods of time in front of a glowing screen. As the world continues to change at a frantic type of pace, so will education. That is the focus of this webinar and my latest book. And let's just get going. Next. Okay. So I want to start by talking about tutoiety in schools. I want to start by talking about exploring paradigms and mindsets in education. Next. So it's amazing how often people embrace doing things the way they've always done them without first carefully examining how or why a process came into use in the first place. We often just accept a pre-existing mindset because it is the path of least resistance. Next. The way educators organize schools is based on decisions made at the time of the horse and buggy, oil lamps, and factory production lines. Decisions that were made before women could vote and the United States flag had only 44 stars on it. Next. Operating in this existence is called a tutoiety mindset. That's the way we've always done it. I have a story that almost personifies tutoiety. I say almost because We are going to perform some, go ahead next. We're going to perform some monkey business. Okay, so I want to provide you the story of the 5 monkeys. Next. Okay, so in his research, Gordon Stevenson, this is back from the 60s, and there's even a little bit of like urban myth. Is this a real case study? Is it not? And I've found it actually does come from true scientific research, so bear with me, please. It finds that Tatwadi was evident in our evolutionary cousins, the monkeys. Envision that you have an enclosure containing 5 monkeys. Next. From the top of the enclosure, hang a banana on a string and place a set of stairs under the banana. Eventually, one of the monkeys will go to the stairs and start to climb towards the bananas. As soon as that monkey touches the bottom stair, you spray all the monkeys in the enclosure with cold water from a fire hose until you drive them all away. Next. After a while, another monkey makes another attempt for the banana with the same results. And again, as soon as that monkey places its foot on the bottom stair, you spray all the monkeys with ice cold water from the fire hose until it drives them away. Repeat this behavior until when one of the monkeys eventually attempts to climb the stairs to grab a banana, the other monkeys attack and prevent that monkey from climbing the stairs because they don't want to get sprayed with that cold water from the hose. Another attempt, another attack, another attempt, another attack. Next. In time, the monkeys all become conditioned, and they understand that if they try to climb the stairs to get to the banana, the other monkeys will attack them. Once the monkeys are conditioned, you can put away the cold water and the fire hose. You won't need them anymore. Next, remove one of the original monkeys from the enclosure and replace it with a new one. Soon, the new monkey will see the banana and try to climb the stairs to get it. To that monkey's shock and horror, all the other monkeys in the enclosure will attack the newest monkey because they don't want to get sprayed with the cold water. After repeated attempts and attacks, the newest monkey also becomes conditioned. The newcomer understands that if it tries to climb the stairs, the others will attack it. Next. Next, remove another one of the original 5 monkeys and replace it with a new one. The scene will repeat itself. When the newest monkey tries to climb the stairs to get the bananas, all the monkeys, including the first newcomer, attacks the newest monkey, punishing it with the greatest of enthusiasm. Likewise, this happens when you replace the third original monkey with a new one, and then the fourth and the fifth. Every time the newest monkey tries to climb the stairs, the other attacks. Interestingly, the monkeys that are beating the newest monkey have no idea why they are not permitted to climb the stairs and get that banana, nor why they are beating the newest monkey. Next. At this critical juncture, the question is, why not? The answer is because as far as all the monkeys in the enclosure are concerned, that's just the way we've always done it. This is the essence of Tatwadi, and our superior human brains do no more to insulate us from this behavior than do the brains of monkeys. Next. It is astonishing how easy it is for us to embrace doing things the way we've always done them without stopping to ask why. Often this happens because it is much easier just to continue going in the same direction than it is to re-examine the situation and evaluate the decisions. Next. And just realize this is that no monkeys were harmed in the writing of this book or the creation of this webinar. And I do feel bad. And I know Pete is going to probably throw some bananas at me. So, sorry. Next. Okay. Now, some of you might be thinking, but that's stupid, that's ridiculous, that's absurd. And you may be right, but here's the thing. Specifications, bureaucracies, institutions, and systems have a natural tendency to solidify in their ways of doing things. Often they may require people to do things in the same way their predecessors have traditionally done them, despite the fact the world continues to change all around them. Next. Tatwadi is an everyday, unconscious, inherent taken for granted, internalized, unconscious part of our lives. We find Tatwadi in our cultures, in our communities, in our many core beliefs, in our homes, in our manners, and in our many unexamined practices and assumptions of life. Next. In 1894, the Committee of 10, a working group of primarily post-secondary educators from the eastern United States, recommended the standardization of the American high school curriculum. More than a century on, their recommendations continue to be the foundational principles upon which America's public education systems rest. Next. In fact, society developed the current education system in a time when a significant portion of the population still lived on farms and rural areas. Consequently, it institutionalized and legalized education as a seasonal enterprise. Schools adopted the 6-hour day and the 9-month calendar to accommodate the demands of farm life. Next. At the beginning of the 20th century, agricultural age thinking gave way to industrial age thinking. Frederick Winslow Taylor's The Principles of Scientific Management became the basis of the modern assembly line. The employers of the time considered the factory model the most advanced form of organizational productivity possible. Not surprisingly, society modeled its schools after the assembly line factories of the early 20th century. Next. So let's do this. Let's do our first hands-on, brains-on activity. I'm going to put you. Let's see, Mitch. I'd like to try and put us into 2 teams, so that this way they can kind of cluster together. So team 1, I'd like you to list as many characteristics as possible. You can just do this. Just make a little mental list. Describe the principles, philosophies, and structures of a factory. Team 2, I want you to list as many characteristics as possible to describe the principles, philosophies, and structures of schools. We're going to take just a couple minutes to do this. Mitch, you ready?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so basically, groups can form with up to 5 people. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Joyce is group 1. And Rushton Hurley, who's here, or was here, he said he had to go early. So maybe I'll change that to Pablo Pitaluga, who's also here. So Joyce will be group 1, Pablo will be group 2. Join in one of them. In Joyce's group, just maybe you just click on the avatar of Joyce and or other people who are already connected to her, and start the discussion. How many characteristics can you all come up with 8 characteristics that are kind of factory oriented? And group 2, those of you who are working with Pablo, can you beat them and come up with even more characteristics of schools? And Ryan, I'll let you come down also so you can join one of the groups, and you and I will come back up in a minute or 2. Okay, and let's bring Ryan back up here also. And okay, so Ryan, you were in one group. So I'm going to deflect this just a little bit, but are you familiar? There's something that I've been reading about called inadequate equilibria. Where complex systems exist, and they have a tremendous ability to continue as a system, and the forces are such that no single person or even no small group can change them because it's in an equilibria, and anybody who tries to change it ends up significantly worse off than if they just went along with the system, even though everybody knows the system is wrong. It seems like that is also one of the plagues of our education system, in addition to Twatty, right?
Yes. Taking a look at types of organizational behavior like this, I make a comparison, or I should say my mentor Ian does, about what he calls the sardines. If you think about a whale, if you think about education as the whale, it takes forever for a whale to turn around completely. It takes minutes upon minutes. I'm talking 10 to 15 minutes for it to completely turn around. But if you think about it, education and the people and teachers and educators and leaders they really have to have the mindset of being a sardine. You see schools of sardines; they almost change direction almost instantaneously. But it's not the whole school going at once. It's just a few of them start, and then all the rest follow. So that's the type of mentality I'm trying to get through to
Wow.
here. But yes, I mean, and I understand these really big systems. They take a lot of time to try and to change anything. So
Now, do you want some people from these groups to volunteer to come up and talk about the items in their groups? I know you were in one of the groups.
sure, absolutely. Go
Or,
ahead and pick
okay,
anybody.
so
Pablo, we couldn't connect to Pablo. I didn't know if maybe he
ah,
just couldn't connect or not.
okay,
Um,
or
so
maybe
feel
you didn't
free
have
to
audio.
just, yeah. So feel free to tie into anybody. Go ahead.
Okay,
Well, we can hear what they have to
so
say.
okay, so oh, it looks like Joyce is there, so I'm going to spotlight Joyce and bring you up. And let me make this even maybe a little bit larger. So Joyce, you were in which group? Group 1 or group 2?
Group 1, and
Okay.
I was with Mary and Enrique.
Ah,
So
okay.
characteristics of factory. We just came up with maybe almost 10 words here. Production or mass production, assembly line, shift workers, efficiency, everything timed out, using components. There was no room for creativity. That was more of a phrase. And automation is where we got to, and then we got to robots. So
Hmm.
That's a good one. That's a good
some of the
tie.
stuff we
Yeah.
came up with. There you
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Okay.
go. Bye.
And so maybe the other group wasn't able to come up with a list.
I did actually talk in group. I was actually
Okay.
part of team 2, and we had
Mhm.
mentioned talking about just compartmentalization. That you work in schools. You compartmentalize. That's how we deal with subjects and the fixed time schedule. So. Yeah, thank you very much. That was great. So let's go ahead and get back into the flow of things here. So I can get to you know and doing a task like this is a lot of activities. If you're not a big fan of the monkey activity, if you really want schools or school systems, or if you want to focus on higher education, if you really want to examine fixed mindsets, there's a lot of other activities I put into a brief history. If you're worried about PETA coming after you, you can always use another type of task or activity. Go ahead, Mitch, if you can go to the next slide. I kind of just come back to, and yeah, so fixed time schedule. You see, there was I'm sorry. Can you go back, Mitch? Sorry, you were on your game and I was off. You see, there's quite a lot of carryover there. Fixed time schedule, routine work, bell system, 8 hour schedule, 6 to 8 hours, I should say. There's also the manager-worker relationship, which is kind of like reflected in the teacher-student or even the principal-student relationship. So there's a lot of power there. There's a lot of leadership, but a lot of times the students are oppressed, and of course the workers are oppressed. Are they getting paid enough? Are they getting enough knowledge? They are, they are truly the receptacles of knowledge, but do they get their say? Do they get their voice? So um, let's go ahead and go next, please. Okay. So to kind of round out this little task right here, to changing to twatty mindsets, and I know Mitch may have a little bit of pushback on that with his equilibrium theories, but the way to challenge mindsets is never quit learning. Question everything new you learn. Be open to new ideas and experiences. Read a ton. That's something that I think a lot of people they sacrifice their time of actually doing reading and their own professional growth. Just read whatever you get your hands on. Challenge pre-existing practices. Ask why. It's not a crime to ask why. In fact, I find those people to be the most refreshing because they come with such unique perspectives. And of course, embrace change, which is never easy, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. All right, next. Okay. So life in the age of disruptive innovation. So this is a lot of like big ideas. This is kind of tying into Clayton Christensen and Michael Horn. And they introduced readers in their book, Disrupting Class, How Disruptive Innovation Will Change the Way the World Learns. And they introduced readers to the concept of disruptive innovation. So disruptive innovation is change that fundamentally transforms the traditional ways of doing things. So innovations such as cloud computing, big data, genetic engineering, smart materials, social media, biotechnology, 3D printing, nanotechnology, AI, virtual reality, and neuroscience are just a few of the big disruptors of the 21st century. And they still continue to disrupt to this day. It's almost like they disrupt at every moment. We're not going to break up into a group, but what I'd like to do is this. I'd like you to think about this question for just a sec. The greatest challenge we face in times of accelerated change is that change is subtle and sneaky. We all know something big is happening, and it's easy to reflect on major hallmarks of change like the internet or mobile technology. But when we think about how these harbingers of change affect our society and our families and how we learn, it's hard to put our finger on exactly what has changed and what is changing. So this begs us to ask some important questions. So think about this. What does the future hold for the world and its citizens? And in what kind of a world will we live? So just take a moment and think about that as we go to the next slide. And I'm going to start to really give you some evidence here of the economy and where it's going. So next. So if we think of the economy, the past few decades have given rise to the gig economy, outsourcing, automation, robotics, and AI. I think a lot of Thomas Friedman. These disruptive factors have gobbled up just about all the routine cognitive jobs, or the jobs that involve doing repetitive mental tasks. These tasks include work such as bookkeeping and taxes, data entry, call center work, reception, help desk, etc. All these disruptive factors are continuing to spread into other industries at an alarming rate. So in his book, The Rise of the Creative Class Revisited, Richard Florida examines workplace trends in the modern world. Florida says, we can essentially divide a nation's workforce into 4 basic groups. 1, agricultural, 2, working, 3, service, and 4, creative. In this context, the creative class jobs are those professions that primarily requires what we describe as headwear skills or thinking skills, abilities such as leadership, critical thinking, problem solving, adaptability, productivity, accountability, communication, information management, creativity, all the the really big, what I call modern learning day skills or next generation skills. If you look at the graph, you will see right around the time that digital technology started to evolve and the era of personal computing began, the creative class started to grow at an astounding rate. Okay, you can see it's the kind of like hot pink purple type of color. And sorry, I'm a guy, so we're terrible at colors. This is because creative class jobs require skills and expertise that disruptive technologies cannot yet replace, although this is likely to change in the years ahead. To this point, technology can only augment or enhance these roles. Next. As 21st century educators, we have to help learners prepare for a new world in a very different economy, an economy where 3/4 of the workforce is in service class or creative class jobs. By 2020, creative class jobs could be as much as 50% of the workforce. But why stop at 2020? Let's apply some exponential thinking and project job prospects for Florida's 4 classes. And let's go ahead to 2050. Let's go ahead and extrapolate. When learners, go back for 1 second and say next, sorry. If I said next, I apologize. That's part of my script. Let's see if this projection can give us any clarity. Take a look at how just much creative has just completely gone off the charts. So it's, if you think about it, creativity is going to be, in this creative class, really going to be the go-getters, the people that are going to be powering our economy for years to come. Next. So the challenge we face as educators and as society is that the subjects and skills that are the simplest to teach and easiest to test are the same skills that are the easiest to automate, digitize, and outsource. Next. We live in a Hunger Games economy where it's everyone for themselves, where the rules of survival are always changing, and where fundamentally uncertainty and functional instability are the orders of the day. Analog generations lived in a world where what you learned once in your youth could sustain you for a lifetime in a single career. My dad was in the food industry for 40 years. That doesn't happen anymore. For digital generations, the idea of the 40-year employee who spends his or her entire career working for one company in one career is a complete novelty. Doesn't really happen as much as it used to. Increasingly, the message people get from both companies and employees is that if they want long-term loyalty, they'd better buy a dog, because they just will not get long-term loyalty from a company or employee anymore. Next. In light of the new global economy, educational leaders face the monumental challenge of bringing schools into line with modern world realities. No longer can we expect learners to get everything they will need for their entire lives by attending school once in their youth. We are now in the new age where disruptive innovation means people must be learners for life that fall on the right side of the new digital divide, the knows and the know-nots. Next. So we cannot continue to depend on yesterday's skills, tools, ideas, business models, or technologies to address the coming changes. A nation's most critical assets are no longer agricultural products, minerals, wood, or other traditional goods. Rather, any nation's most significant assets are a highly educated, technologically literate workforce of lifelong thinkers and lifelong learners. These are learners that schools have equipped with modern skills that facilitate the ability to be lifelong learners that can really rearm themselves with necessary knowledge again and again and again for their entire working lives. Next. Okay, so let's compare the institution of school to so let's go ahead and do this. Let's think about and brainstorm real quickly, and people can come up on stage. What are the next generation skills today's students must be equipped with to thrive in the future? And is modern day education focusing on these skills? Can I have a couple people come on up and share?
So click on that raise hand button if you have a microphone and you'd like to share. If you'd rather, you can click on that text box. Remember, there's a text box all the way to the left of your screen, and you can click on that and you can type in text comments as well. I'm kind of
I'm happy
reading
to
this
do it
on my
either
screen.
way.
Yeah, as you're talking, and I actually think, understanding multicultures is one of the skills that's going to be incredibly important as we move forward. And it's probably something that we don't think of in the U.S. as much, because we're kind of, we think of ourselves as a monoculture. Hey, there's 50 states. We all speak the same language. But when you're working or collaborating or competing with people from different countries, it's not just the language, it's the thinking and the culture behind the language. And I think multicultural sensitivity and the ability to thrive with multiple cultures is going to be one of the skills that often doesn't get mentioned. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Absolutely. Especially with all the different types, I'm seeing people mentioning collaboration. Absolutely, because it's not just about the person that's in the same room with you. It's the person that is in a different time zone. It's a person that's in a different country, a member of a different race or socioeconomic background. All of these different intersections of culture are absolutely going to be crucial, because these people are also in our school systems too. So,
yeah, and I'll just say, and on a related thing, I think, we talk about people having to learn how to collaborate better. A lot of the research that has come out on the results of collaboration is that it may be easier as a group to form cohesion if all the members of the group are the same, but the results are nowhere near as good as when members of the group are diverse and different. So if you can pull together a group where there's people from different cultures, people from different backgrounds, people, not all male, not all female. That the more diverse the group is, that if the group can still hang together, they can come up with significantly better results than a group that's kind of monoculture or one or two attributes that everybody in the group has. So being able to work in those types of environments and being on the lookout for those environments is another skill, I think, that's becoming increasingly important.
Absolutely. And just looking at the chat, problem solving, Joyce is right on. Gail, learning from and teaching others, the mentoring, but also the informal learning experiences, learning from others, the collaboration. Absolutely. Collaborative skills are absolutely vital. And it's nice because if you add virtual environments, it actually helps to bring other people out of their shell when they're not kind of used to that face-to-face. Now, don't get me wrong. I think you have to have a wide variety of both face-to-face and virtual types of connections. But yeah, and Joyce making the connection about the standardized high stakes testing, not let's see.
Well, wait a minute. Everybody I know who's got an important job, I think the number one skill that they have is being able to answer multiple choice tests. I mean, isn't that the key thing for high employability today?
You got it. I mean, was it that remember, no child left untested? I mean, that's
right.
That's policy, right? So now I'm just teasing. So thank you very much again. Excellent list. Let's keep on going. Okay, so I have 8:40, so we're doing okay. Okay, so let me get back on here. I got too excited. All right, so disruptive innovation, the tidal wave of change engulfing our traditional ways of living, working, and learning in the modern world has fundamentally transformed every aspect of our lives. How we work, play, communicate, and learn new technologies, and what I describe in one of my earlier books called Reinventing Learning for the Always-On Generation. I identify, and my co-authors identify, digital bombardment, which has, that's just the constant bombardment of information and information communication and all this other content. It's really altered the way younger generations think, communicate, and learn. Next. Scientists now have evidence that the brain structure is far more malleable than we originally believed, and environmental stimuli, experiences, and emotions constantly affect it, causing the brain to reorganize and restructure itself. I mean, I think we all by now know that neuroplasticity, that constant bombardment of information, is constantly wiring and rewiring our kids' brains. Next. So what happens is it's really created kind of like a fundamentally different kind of learner. And in this book, which is really well received, people really liked it because it kind of gave kind of like overarching types of ideas, which are going to be very practical for anybody who's teaching the digital generations today. And these are the 9 core learning attributes of the digital generations. I'm going to run through each briefly individually. So next. So the first one is digital learners prefer receiving information from multiple hyperlinked digital sources. So rather than being limited to the slow release of information provided in the form of classroom lectures, discussions, worksheets, or textbooks, modern learners can ask digital assistants like Siri, Google Assistant, Alexa, or Katana for simple answers as questions arise in context. In the age of information overload, or what we call hyperinformation, it is essential for digital learners to master the ability to sift through and critically analyze all the data scattered across the digital landscape to discover the information they are searching for. Okay. To effectively use the power of the internet, learners and teachers alike must be able to distinguish between information, misinformation, and myth-information among online sources. Okay. As educators, providing learners with information in multiple modalities and from multiple perspectives is key to engaging them as agents in their own learning and as savvy consumers of information. Next. So the next one is digital learners prefer parallel processing and multitasking. Before you pelt me with rotten fruit, just let me continue. So many parents have had the experience of walking into a child's room and finding him or her using a tablet or computer, earbuds draped around their necks, blasting music, listening to some band, pretending to do their guitar solo. Meanwhile, they're doing their homework, watching YouTube, and sending a Snapchat message. For many members of the previous generations, this scenario resonates as being utterly overwhelming. There's just too much going on at once. The amazing thing is, if you ask your children or students, many of them may tell you that they're still bored. John Medina, who, if you've never read any of his books, he's absolutely wonderful, writes just great content. He states that multitasking indicates that, contrary to popular belief, multitasking is it's just not, it's a myth. You cannot multitask cognitively intense like activities. You can do a process which is called continuous partial attention that aren't quite as cognitively demanding. And we do this type of time slicing all the time. When you're driving your car, you're thinking about what you have to do that day. You're thinking about where's my next exit. You're having a conversation with the person next to you. That's time slicing. That's continuous partial attention. Now, the digital generations can multitask simple, non-cognitively tasking activities, but they should be encouraged to focus on single tasks until they're completed. Next. Okay, so digital learners prefer processing pictures, sound, color, and video before they process text. Traditionally, pictures were presented in texts as a supplement to the intended message. However, due in large part to advances in and the prevalence of digital technologies and media, the digital generations have grown up in a remarkably visual world. Images have the ability to quickly communicate meaning. Burmark states that the eye processes images 60,000 times faster than it processes the content of text. From an early age, modern culture regularly exposes the digital generations to television, computers, tablets, videos, and digital games that put in front of children colorful, highly expressive, high-quality, realistic, multi-sensory experiences such as sight, sound, and touch. As a result, many of the digital generations prefer to process pictures, sound, color, and videos before they process text. Next, digital learners prefer to network and collaborate simultaneously with many others. Although the digital generations are highly social, although not in the same way that previous generations were. They use computers, laptops, tablets, smartphones, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, video mashups, etc., etc. Based on current trends, being able to transparently communicate and work with others in both virtual and face-to-face teams is becoming an increasingly critical skill, which we discussed before. Next, because of digital bombardment and the chronic urge to rapidly skim, scan, and scour through digital resources, a new reading pattern has emerged in the always-on generations. Before the proliferation of digital screens and web-based content, traditional book readers engaged in a reading pattern similar to the letter Z. So they do what's called a zigzag pattern. Now, this is, of course, culturally stuck to a lot of a lot of North American reading. It's different in the other cultures, in Asia and so forth. But anyway, getting back, as a result of constant exposure to digital reading formats, reading in the 21st century involves viewing the layout of things such as social media pages, websites, tablets, smartphone screens, etc. And it becomes what is known as a F pattern. So what they start first is they skim the sides of the page, and then they will just go into the page little by little. In fact, they will ignore the bottom right side of the page unless you put something in a page that is like forcing their eye to that part of the page. So even graphical display now is very important for the readers of the digital generations, their reading abilities. So here's a little hint. If you really want them to go in and read the entire document, try to put something to the bottom right side that will force them to go to that side. Okay, next. Also, digital learners prefer just-in-time learning. We did mention that a little bit before. We have to understand that the schools are really, they're designed to be just in case, as in just in case it's on the test, just in case that you might need this 10, 15, 20 years down the line, just in case you need it for a good grade. However, now in such a, in the world of disruptive innovation, we have to really have that just-in-time mentality, because we're going to have to learn, unlearn, and relearn for the rest of our lives, and that's what we want our students to develop. A lot of them now go on YouTube to discover how to just do about anything. My son just got a drone for Hanukkah, and he's learning how to use it, not by reading all that big, gigantic directions. He's going on to YouTube to figure out how to control it. Next. Next, there's also digital learners have not only grown up in the digital world, but have grown up in one with advanced and mature tools to better navigate it once they get there. So they really prefer things that will give them instant gratification, immediate rewards, and also feedback. Things like smartphones, video games, social media tools, and all tell the students in the digital age is if they put the time into it, and if they master the game or tool, they'll be rewarded with the next level, a win, a place on the leaderboard, or a skill their peers respect and value. And the thing is that these trends are important to these kids, to the point to where they'll put the hours in to really cultivate their skills. I mean, take a look at the explosion of esports and stuff like that. They are just, these kids are now rock stars, and they use, yes, Pablo, absolutely, they do use. I'm just looking back at the chat, and sorry, I'm not trying to ignore it, but yeah, they use YouTube as a search engine, because they'd rather get those little chunks of YouTube videos as quick as possible so that they can solve their problems and not waste their time. Because they think the instruction book is too 20th century. Another one I mentioned is digital learners are transfluent. They go between digital and real world. Now we're seeing that they have kind of like this hybrid existence where their online persona and interface and behavior is almost as important as their face-to-face. So they're constantly looking for this. A good example is like virtual field trips in schools now. A lot of students are doing this now, and it's like probably not considered to be as good as the real thing, but schools can't always do that because they don't have the funds or the money, or there's logistical issues. A lot of times they'll go to these virtual field trips and the kids will have a blast. Google Expeditions, they can go to the bottom of the ocean. They don't even know how to swim. Next. And finally, digital learners benefit from learning that is simultaneously relevant, engaging, active, instantly useful, and fun. So outside of school, learners are constantly connected to others in a global intelligence. Okay, they are immersed in virtual environments that promote a participatory culture that encourages them to not only interact with their friends and classmates, but also with others in far-off places. They pick what game to play. They choose what blog post to read or write, what causes to advocate for, what videos to like, which friends to text, what music to listen to. However, when they go to schools, many of the digital generations have little sense of or opportunity for ownership. So trying to provide them with some sort of ownership. They lack the choices. We have to give them more choices. This, I think, is going to probably end up being our last little call out. But here's a hands-on, brains-on activity. What type of, and I put up here on the right-hand side all of the different learning preferences that I just mentioned. Can you think of any instructional approaches or digital tools that you use in the classroom, or that you think about using in the classroom, that would access these attributes? Let's go ahead and just take about 2 minutes to list some. We can do the chat, or if anybody wants to raise their hand and share, we could do that too.
Yeah, actually, so if somebody wants to raise their hand and talk about some of the things that you use in the classroom, I'll put you up on stage and you can talk about your techniques. And if you've written books on any techniques, you're welcome to talk about your books as well. And otherwise, you feel free to use the text box. While we're talking, looking at this list. And if you were a teacher and you said, "Well, I know all these things. How do I get started?" What would you say to that teacher? There's 7 different attributes here, right?
There's 9.
9. I'm sorry, I can't count. Right? There's 9 different.
That's okay.
There's 9 different attributes. So it's like, so where do I get started? How do I use this in my classroom? What would you tell the person?
They have to really understand that there is, and it's not 100% perfect. It's, there's a lot of, also there's culture and access to technology. They obviously affect this quite a bit too. But I mean, you're finding even in some countries that are, were traditionally considered to be underdeveloped, they are accessing and getting hold of technology quite extensively. What they need to do is they need to understand that a lot of the tools and activities and tasks that they do with their students can be tied to these, and it's usually the strong ones. The thing that game-based learning is tied obviously into that they prefer to for instant gratification, immediate rewards. That's fantastic, but it also ties into other things that they like to process picture, sound, and color before they actually process text. A lot of the information that's gone through digital gaming and learning through digital gaming is done through many of these different attributes. I know that somebody had mentioned, Joyce had mentioned, of course, Google Docs for collaborative, activities. Brief history is based on a book that's coming out in January. We didn't use Microsoft Word to type it. We used Google Docs and we used Skype. As I said before, my co-author is he spends half his time in Canada, half his time in New Zealand. So we have to play the whole virtual collaboration where we actually use two tools together to generate books. I've met my mentor face to face probably a handful of times, but he's probably one of my closest friends. And I've only met him a few times, so it's just we're trying to practice what we preach.
Well, and I also look at this list and I say, okay, I get that kids would rather learn this way, but that doesn't mean that that's the right way to teach them. Maybe teaching them through text and lectures really is the right way of teaching them. Why do we have to teach them the way they want to? They decided to learn. Isn't that a cop-out?
No, not true. And this kind of ties back to learning theorists like Seymour Papert and Pablo Freire. They talk about how education can be really oppressive, and it's really kind of developing students not to be prepared to go into a world that's cutthroat and they have to take ownership of it. They depend so much on schools to do everything for them, and really it's not preparing them for what lies beyond that. So this is helping them to take ownership of their learning.
So you're really saying that using the old methods of teaching is much more of a cop-out. Using these is really forcing the kids to, you're aligning with the way they want to learn, but you're forcing them to take ownership of their learning, which is really the skill. Taking ownership of their lives is the skill that they need moving forward in their life anyhow.
Yeah, and listen, it's not about saying that tried and true traditional learning is bad. You have to balance it. If they're going to listen to a talking head the whole entire time they're in schools, they're going to zone out because there's much more interesting experiences in the world. You have students dropping out and starting, Fortune 500 companies. They want active, they want relevant, they want engaging learning. I'm not saying that traditional lecture is always bad. It's just overused. I'm not saying that direct instruction is the devil. It's overused. They want diverse experiences, things that are engaging, things that are active, things that, Enrique's list is perfect, that the students can get involved in. They want stuff that's real world. They want to see relevance in what they're doing. That's where this list kind of comes into play. And if you just do like ethnography, if you just go and just look at students in the real world and just see this is things that you can really notice as you're teaching. So just anyway,
Great.
just kind of
just one more question
on.
one more question based on the list is, you mentioned when you were doing the bullet point on the students prefer parallel processing and multitasking, but at the same time that the brain needs to learn how to process completely, and it actually works on one project at a time. Otherwise, you're doing the continuous partial attention. You're not really focusing and doing as good a job on a particular thing. How do you reconcile that in the class? Your students want every 15 seconds they want something new, but we know that they need to be able to work on things for a long time. What are you doing in a class?
And it's not just the classroom; it's also at home too. It's just
Right. Okay.
what they have to do is they have to see that it is a myth that doing things or trying to do more than one thing at a time, especially when it's very cognitively demanding, is just going to have you running around in circles. That you're going to have to stop and start and stop and start. Educators, they're multitaskers. They try to grade papers as they teach. They find out that the performance suffers in probably both activities that they're trying to do. They have to kind of learn, and they have to have, try the single task focus. And this is where you're kind of getting into, people are finding that there's issues with like deep reading as being an issue because kids want to skim, scan, and scour. If they have that type of single focus where they're cognitively really dialed into the reading that they're doing and they're focusing, they could be really deep thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay. And were there other comments in the text box?
Oh my goodness, yeah. Everybody's just shooting away. Enrique's mentioning gamification, gamifying, absolutely. That obviously ties into the immediate reward, that constant feedback. Let's see. And I'm sorry, I'm going kind of backwards, which is kind of like but active, engagement, absolutely. Let's see. Is the question teaching? It's really hard to kind of go backwards. Okay.
Well, maybe I can.
Yeah, like options. I'm sorry. Yeah. So Mary had mentioned options to show mastery of the concepts. Absolutely. I mean, it's giving them options on how they want to demonstrate their learning is awesome, because the students actually get to embed some of their creativity into the situation too, and they get some ownership of what they do. Are they going to develop a video? Are they going to do a podcast? Are they going to write something and post it onto a blog? If they get this decision, they can still be assessed much the same way, but they're getting to choose how they express themselves. So yeah, definitely that's an option. And I know it's kind of getting it's after 9 o'clock now.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, time flies, and unfortunately, there's just so much other content I really want to go through. Maybe I can sweet
you
talk
are going
Mitch into having me come back. Go ahead.
Okay, and you are going to talk at FETC, right?
Oh goodness, yes. I'm going to take this and kind of reposition some other things, to talk more about what's in the future, how is learning going to be in the future, what type of roles are educators going to take, and really going not just into their roles, but also strategies. Um, uh, Mitch, can you advance to the second
Sure.
to last screen? And again,
So I
I'm
can't tell which is
sorry,
the second
folks.
to last, but it's
Oh,
tell
yeah, sorry.
me
I have to
tell me
kind of
when to
advance
stop.
through quite a bit. Yeah,
Oh,
just keep
wow.
on keeping on.
Well, these are great pictures.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I had other activities, and there's the
Oh,
modern
yeah.
learning
You'll have
skills.
to come back. You'll have to come back. Probably in February.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be happy to. And again, I was I was kind of planning for that. In fact, I was really worried I wasn't going to get through enough. Um, yeah, and
Continue
right
more.
here where it says where do we begin? Um, Let me just start by saying this is that um, in just this 1 hour webinar, and again, and if you didn't quite get what you were looking for, in Florida, I'll have a lot more. I'll be able to go into more detail, but of course, the book is coming out. I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to be like a self promoter here.
No,
If
you
you
probably earn at least a cup of coffee for every copy of the book that's sold, right?
No, I don't. Um, it's I get some trinkets. That's about it. Um, if you're interested in more about this, and still on the ropes, if you want to look at more, I actually do have an executive summary I could give you, which is free. It doesn't cost any money. So just if you're more interested in more of the takeaways, you're more than willing to take a look. But again, the book is going to be filled with research-based predictions, additional roles of educators, and over 200 strategies for educators and learners on preparing students for tomorrow, next year, and even decades from now. Um, it, I really wanted to kind of give everybody the kitchen sink. Um, and if Mitch could go to the next, if you're interested, the book is going to be out in January, right during FETC. I'm trying to get. I'm actually. Can you go back one real quick? I'm sorry. If you're interested in pre-ordering the book, it's going to be through Corwin. Um, Actually, go ahead forward now. There's the link right there. Just go. There it is, right there. There's the link to. Dang it! I'm sorry. I keep on looking at two screens. Bad me. If you're interested, it is available through Corwin. Brief History, Future Education. There's the Bitly link. You're more than welcome to pre-order. It's going to be out. I convinced Corwin to do it in color, so it's absolutely a beautiful book inside, and it's not. Again, it's them really taking what I wrote and making it absolutely gorgeous. I'm not giving myself credit. If you're interested in collaborating or discussing more, could you go to the next slide? And if you also want to ask questions based on this webinar, you're more than welcome to reach out to me on Twitter, or even email me. Also, I put Ian's contact information there too. If you're interested in contacting, collaborating, anything, please feel free to reach out. This is obviously, working with Mitch, I'm able to meet a lot of awesome people, a lot of awesome educators, and I'm happy to continue collaborating and working with you all.
Yeah,
At this
but
point,
I think in February we'll have another session and we'll focus on practical recommendations for how do you do this in your classroom. Because there
absolutely,
seems to be a
it's
lot.
just
The whole second half seemed to be devoted to that, and my questions probably threw you off.
Oh, no, 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 don't, no. It's absolutely. I just basically, I want to give everybody the kitchen sink, and it's really hard. It's hard to do within, like, but I want to respect everybody's time. And happy holidays to everybody too. If you celebrate or not, just be safe for the winter. And I hope to see those people in Florida. If not, please reach out on Twitter. Happy to connect and collaborate. So.
Yeah, well, I'll see you in Orlando, and we'll communicate offline and set up a date in February.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Everybody have a great time.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. And this is Mitch Weisberg. I'm going to sign off for Edchat Interactive. Hope to see you at one of our events in January, and hope to see you all at FETC. Good night, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, and anything else that you celebrate. Take care. Bye.